So it's forced air, but it's heated by natural gas, and so that'll keep
Okay.
the cost down a little bit. Um, but I don't think they'll even need to use the furnace very much. When we were in there building the house, before there was even a furnace in it, once we had it insulated with the hempcrete and had the attic insulated, it stayed pretty warm in there every day. We didn't have a really cold winter this past year, so we didn't put it to the full test. But from what we've seen so far, I don't think they're even going to need the furnace very much.
Nice.
Okay, so this is the slideshow. It's actually in the middle slide. It's a video of the whole process of us spraying this house. And so you can see there to the left, you can see the interior framework that we have in there, the extra little grid work to hold the hempcrete in place. Then we use the vapor permeable house wrap and use that as our permanent formwork, basically. So we weren't having to use any OSB for formwork or anything. That was what we sprayed directly against
That
with
made
some.
of paper, or what is that made of?
The house wrap, that is the a Mento wrap, from I think 475 Supply or something like that.
Okay.
They have it in different levels that you can get different strengths. We chose one of the not even the not even one of the strong ones, and it held up just fine for the hempcrete. So that was pretty cool.
Now, were y'all
And
spraying against that with like a support board behind it, or?
yep, so we taped, well, we stapled all of the Mento straight to the studs of the house from the exterior. And then we took furring strips. Well, and then we taped it with a Tuscan Vanna tape. That's also a vapor permeable tape. And we taped all of the staples for extra support. And then we put furring strips behind that. And that was basically all of our support. We didn't have any OSB or anything holding it in place. It was just the furring strips and the staples
Now,
and
what
the
was
tape.
the exterior cladding on the outside?
This for this house, it was siding,
Okay, so then,
vinyl. Yeah,
so it's not perfectly flat, so you've got a little bit of cushion in between there in those furring strips, but that's going to make your rain screen for attaching the cladding. Yeah,
yeah,
nice. And I know for those who are finding this with, you go back and look in the presentations that Cameron has about the spray systems. I think he talks a little bit about this project as well as some of those vapor open wrap scenarios so that you can have a cladding system like this. Everybody doesn't want plaster on the outside of their house or doesn't want to budget for plaster on the outside of the house. That's a whole nother logistical consideration, but this is where you can have that traditional look on there. So just a frame of reference on that to go back and look at those other ones.
yeah. And going into that project or going into this project, we decided that from the start that we were going to go with a siding on the exterior. Like I said, it was the first project. We didn't know anything about lime plaster. We still barely know anything about lime plaster, and so we just wanted to make sure we could get the project finished. We didn't want to just build a hempcrete house and then, then what do we do? So going in, and also the climate that we live in, I don't, there's really not many plastered houses in Minnesota. Almost all of them look just like this with vinyl siding or steel siding on the exterior. So that was another reason we didn't know how the plaster would even hold up in the elements. Um, we get big snow drifts leaning up on the side of your house all winter long, and then we get really long winters sometimes where it's still snowing into May, and so it's just we didn't know, I guess, as a group if it was gonna hold up well to the elements, and so that's why we chose to do it that way. And it saved us a ton of time. It saved us a ton of money doing it this way, and so we were able to produce a house that basically anybody could purchase. This is as as cheap of a house as you can get. We are right around $173 a square foot on this house, with all of the hempcrete, with having two full units done by the plumber, two separate units, because trying to convince a plumber that we didn't need big furnaces was impossible in Minnesota. And so they still put in giant furnaces in each unit. And so that was paying the plumber $60,000. We were still able to come in at 170, around $170 a square foot.
Wow, that's impressive. And what was the furnace units? You said, is that like a circulated water heat system on that?
So it's forced air, but it's heated by natural gas, and so that'll keep
Okay.
the cost down a little bit. Um, but I don't think they'll even need to use the furnace very much. When we were in there building the house, before there was even a furnace in it, once we had it insulated with the hempcrete and had the attic insulated, it stayed pretty warm in there every day. We didn't have a really cold winter this past year, so we didn't put it to the full test. But from what we've seen so far, I don't think they're even going to need the furnace very much.
Nice.
And then the interior walls, there is drywall in there. Same with the ceiling as well. The floor, there is no hempwood flooring in there. And so it is cheaper materials, I guess. But that was another way we were able to keep the prices down. And it was going to serve as temporary emergency housing. And so really, we just needed a roof for people to live in. We have a lot of foster kids in the community, and the moms can't get their kids back if they don't have a house to live in. And so this is, these type of units are perfect for that. There is a truth window there on the separating wall between the two units. We did a hand cast, 10 inches thick of hempcrete in between the two units to
Yeah, I
serve
saw
it.
the truth window there. What's the covering over that? Is that plaster on the over the hempcrete, or
Yeah.
is that?
So all of the plaster interior is all lime plastered. All of the interior walls are lime plaster. The interior wall that separates the two units is lime plaster. Um, Only the interior partitions are the drywall walls. The
Now, how did
interior
y'all
wall. What's that?
how did y'all connect the drywall marrying up with plaster? Is there like a piece of trim there, or did you just do it as best you could and transition?
Yeah, so it was actually a little bit tricky on this project because we didn't have the drywall on the ceiling hung before we did the plaster. And so we had a plaster training in the last fall, to do this house. And when we did it, yeah, we didn't have any of the ceiling drywall hung. And so when we had Tim White from Texas Healthy Homes and Jennifer Martin from Hempstone and Naveed Hatfield come and do a plaster training. And so when they showed up, you know, we didn't we didn't have time to hang the drywall on the ceiling by then, and so we just went through with the plaster training, um, and then we had to come back in and try and meet the drywall with the plaster, which was kind of a pain. But we just had to get real tedious with it, and then everywhere where we met something like that we didn't want in contact with the moisture, we would use some type of tape in between, either usually the Vicor tape, the same tape that we use on the floor in between the OSB and the hempcrete, or between the concrete and the hempcrete. So we would put that tape in between there. And then to tighten it up for like air seal, we use a glue called Superb glue, Superb with a B. It is a vapor permeable glue, and yeah, so we just did that at the joints as well, just to make sure, um, for any air cracks, I guess, or any air leaks in the system. So
And that tape would take plaster right over it?
The tape? No, so we would put the tape in between the, like, say if it was going to go up to butt up to drywall. If the drywall didn't have the paper on it, then yeah, we would put a tape right on the drywall in between.
Gotcha.
I don't know if that's how most people do it, but that's, we didn't want the moisture transferring from the drywall to the hempcrete, and so that's why we did that, just kind of as precaution, I guess.
Well, yeah, not enough people have done it to know how most people do it. That's why, all these little bitty things like where one butts up against to another, those are
Yeah.
the things that keep all of us up at night. And so it's nice to know how people do it. And then one, you've got to make the connection. Two,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to not have it be connected, i.e. the
Mm-hmm.
transfer of
Yeah.
moisture. And as long as you know the concept of it has to connect, but it has to not transfer moisture, then you know the problem and you know how to go about it. And there's a couple of different ways to do it. Like I know Tim's done where, if the walls are similar in material and there's not going to be a disproportionate expansion and contraction, well, then you can just carry the clay plaster right around over your interior walls if you're working on something similar. And then the crude answer to it all is just put a nice trim board there and don't worry about the joint. And so that's kind of the way that we're looking at doing things, to where even if it does create an unsightly joint, you've put a piece of trim over it to where now you've got a nice transition.